The morning sun barely peeked through the thick curtains of the modest suburban home. Jacob Reynolds, a retired mechanic with a head of silver hair and a face etched with lines of wisdom, shuffled to his front porch. He paused, savoring the crisp air, the scent of fresh dew on the grass, and the silence of a world just beginning to stir. But then he froze. The driveway was empty. His beloved 1955 Chevy Bel Air, a car he had spent countless nights restoring, was gone. Jacob's heart raced, disbelief clawing at his chest. He staggered forward, eyes darting around in desperate hope that this was some kind of trick, but there was no mistaking it. The car that had carried so many memories, the car that represented his blood, sweat, and tears, had been stolen. "Not my Chevy," he whispered, his voice breaking. He clenched his fists, the raw pain of loss transforming into something far more potent: determination. Just then, a soft voice called from behind. "Grandpa, what's wrong?" Jacob turned to see his 15-year-old granddaughter, Lily, standing in the doorway. Her brow furrowed in concern as she stepped closer, her eyes widening as she realized what was missing. "Wasn't your car parked right here?" she asked, pointing to the empty space. "It was," Jacob replied, his voice tight. "Someone took her." Lily bit her lip, her gaze shifting from her grandfather's stricken face to the empty driveway. And then something changed in her expression, a spark of determination that mirrored Jacob's own. "Then we'll get it back," she said firmly. Jacob blinked, taken aback. "Lily, this isn't a game. These people, they're dangerous." "So are we," Lily shot back, surprising him with her fierce resolve. "I know more about tech than any of them. You know more about cars than anyone in this city. If we work together, they won't stand a chance." For a moment, the two stared at each other, generations apart yet united by a shared goal. And then, slowly, Jacob nodded. "All right, kiddo," he said softly. "Let's bring my Chevy back home." With that, grandfather and granddaughter embarked on a journey that would test their courage, their bond, and their very understanding of what it meant to never, ever give up. And little did they know, what awaited them would shock everyone. Jacob sat at his kitchen table, the morning's incident still weighing heavily on his mind. Every glance out the window toward the empty driveway felt like a punch to the gut. He'd been through a lot in his life, hard work, sacrifice, even loss, but nothing prepared him for the hollow feeling of losing something that represented decades of his life's work. "Grandpa, I found something." Lily's excited voice broke through his thoughts. He looked up to see her laptop open on the table, a series of grainy security camera images displayed on the screen. His first instinct was to dismiss her. This was dangerous, and she was just a kid. But the look on her face made him pause. She was serious, her eyes sharp with focus. "Let me see that," he murmured, moving beside her. "I hacked into some of the local businesses' CCTV feeds," Lily explained, tapping a few keys. "This is the footage from last night, around the time you said the car was taken." Jacob squinted at the screen. The image was blurry, the light from a street lamp casting shadows across the road, but there, just barely visible, was a dark shape moving across the frame. "See?" Lily pointed. "That's the back of your Chevy." A thrill of hope shot through him. "That's her," he whispered, leaning closer. "But what's that in front?" "I think it's a van. See how the back is open? It looks like they loaded your car onto it." His jaw tightened. Whoever these people were, they knew what they were doing. "Can you tell where it went?" Lily hesitated, chewing her lip. "Not exactly, but I tracked the van through a few other cameras. It headed out of town toward the old industrial district." "The industrial district?" Jacob's brow furrowed. That area had been run down for years, filled with abandoned warehouses and shady garages, not the kind of place he wanted his granddaughter snooping around. "Let me handle it, Lily," he said firmly, but the girl shook her head stubbornly. "No way. This is my investigation too," she argued. "If I hadn't looked up these cameras, we'd be stuck waiting for the cops to do something. I'm not sitting this one out, Grandpa." Jacob opened his mouth to protest, but stopped. She was right. The police would file a report, send an officer to take notes, and that would be the end of it. His car would disappear, just another case number in a sea of unsolved crimes. But Lily had already done more in a few hours than they had. Maybe, just maybe, together they could do this. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Okay, kid," he relented, "but we do it my way. No risky stunts. You stay close to me, and the second things look dangerous, we're out. Got it?" Lily's face lit up and she nodded eagerly. "Got it, Grandpa." "All right," Jacob said, a small smile tugging at his lips. "Let's see what these punks are up to." They set out that afternoon, Jacob's old truck rattling along the back roads toward the industrial district. It wasn't a fancy ride like the Bel Air, but it was reliable, and that's what mattered now. As they drove, Jacob's mind raced. What kind of operation steals a classic car like his? It wasn't the sort of thing you could just fence to any buyer. It was unique, easily recognizable. Whoever took it had a specific purpose in mind. The industrial district loomed ahead, a tangle of crumbling buildings and rusted fences. Jacob parked a block away from the warehouse Lily had pinpointed from the security footage. They approached cautiously, staying in the shadows. "This is the place," Lily whispered, pointing to a large, decrepit building surrounded by high chain-link fencing. The windows were shattered, and the paint was peeling, but it was the only building in the area that seemed to have any signs of activity. Jacob eyed the place warily. "Looks abandoned." "It's not," Lily countered. "I checked online. There's no record of anyone owning it, but the utilities are still running. Somebody's using it, and they don't want anyone to know." Jacob grunted in approval. She was smart. He'd give her that. Together, they crept closer, slipping through a gap in the fence. The inside of the warehouse was dim, the only light coming from a few overhead lamps casting eerie shadows on the walls. Jacob's breath caught when he saw it. There, tucked in the far corner, was his Chevy. His heart leapt. She looked unharmed, a little dusty, but otherwise intact. But as they moved closer, he realized they weren't alone. A group of men were clustered around another car, arguing in low voices. Jacob tensed, pulling Lily back into the shadows. "Easy," he whispered. "Let's just see what they're up to." They listened quietly as the men bickered. "We can't keep storing them here," one of the men, a lanky figure in a leather jacket, growled. "It's too risky. The cops are already sniffing around." "Relax," another man, stocky with a thick beard, replied. "This place is a fortress. Nobody's finding us unless we want them to." "What about the old guy's car?" a third voice cut in. "We should have torched it, not left it out like a trophy." Jacob's fists clenched, but he forced himself to stay calm. Torch his car? Over his dead body. "Enough," the leader snapped. "We'll deal with it tomorrow. For now, just keep everything locked down. We've got buyers coming in next week, and I don't want any screw-ups." The men grumbled but dispersed, leaving just one guard near the entrance. Jacob watched, his mind racing. They couldn't confront these guys head-on. They were outnumbered, and who knew what kind of firepower they had? No, they needed a plan. Something smart, something unexpected. "What do we do now?" Lily whispered, eyes wide. Jacob took a deep breath. "We come back tonight." "Tonight?" He nodded. "We'll wait until they're gone. Then we get my car back, and maybe, just maybe, we'll get some evidence on these guys while we're at it." Lily's eyes gleamed with excitement. "Like a real heist?" "Something like that," Jacob murmured, a smile tugging at his lips. "But remember, this isn't a game. We do this carefully, or not at all." Lily nodded solemnly. "I'll be careful, Grandpa, I promise." "Good," he said, ruffling her hair affectionately. "Now let's get out of here before they see us." As they slipped back into the shadows, Jacob couldn't help but feel a surge of hope. He was going to get his car back, and when he did, he'd make sure these thieves paid for every minute they'd taken from him. Little did he know, the real danger was just beginning. That night, Jacob and Lily sat in the truck just outside the warehouse, shrouded in darkness. They'd waited for hours, watching as one by one the men from earlier left. Now, only a single guard remained, lazily leaning against a rusted barrel near the entrance. The flicker of his cigarette was the only light in the still night air. "You sure you want to do this, kid?" Jacob murmured, glancing at Lily. She looked up at him, her face serious. "I'm sure, Grandpa. We're getting your car back. Together." Jacob felt a surge of pride and fear. This wasn't some harmless adventure. They were about to walk into a den of criminals. But if they turned back now, he might never see his Chevy again. Gritting his teeth, he nodded. "All right, follow my lead." They slipped out of the truck and crept along the perimeter of the building, sticking to the shadows. Jacob's heart hammered as they neared the back entrance. Lily had found the building's blueprints online, revealing a side door that would hopefully be less guarded. "Here," she whispered, pointing to a narrow doorway partially hidden by an overgrown bush. Jacob tested the handle. Locked. He glanced at Lily, who grinned and pulled a small toolkit from her jacket pocket. Within moments, she had the lock picked, and the door swung open silently. "Where did you learn to do that?" he asked, impressed. "Internet?" she replied with a smirk, slipping inside. Jacob followed, shaking his head. Kids these days. The inside of the warehouse was dark and cold, the air heavy with the scent of oil and rust. They moved quietly, navigating the maze of crates and machinery until they reached the main storage area. Jacob's breath caught when he saw it again, his Chevy, gleaming under the dim overhead lights. But something was wrong. Two figures stood beside the car, their voices low and tense. "What's taking so long?" one of them muttered. "We should have moved this piece already. Boss will have our heads if we screw this up." "Relax," the other grunted. "The tow truck's coming. Just keep an eye out." Jacob ducked behind a crate, pulling Lily down beside him. This wasn't part of the plan. They'd expected the place to be empty by now. He glanced at Lily, who was biting her lip anxiously. "What do we do?" she mouthed. Jacob hesitated. If they waited, the car would be gone again. If they acted, they risked alerting the entire operation. But then he caught sight of something. The men were distracted, arguing about the best route out of the city. They weren't paying attention. He made a decision. "Stay here," he whispered. "I'm going to create a distraction." "Wait, Grandpa!" But before she could stop him, Jacob slipped out from behind the crate. Keeping low, he grabbed a length of pipe from the floor and hurled it across the room. It clattered loudly against a metal shelving unit, the sound echoing through the cavernous space. "What the?" One of the men spun around, gun drawn. "Go, check it out," the other snapped. The first man moved cautiously toward the noise, leaving his partner alone by the car. Jacob's heart pounded as he crept closer, staying in the shadows. He needed to take this guy out quietly, without alerting his friend. But then Lily appeared beside him, holding a heavy wrench. "What are you doing?" Jacob hissed. "Helping," she whispered fiercely. Before he could protest, she slipped past him, darting behind the man as he leaned against the car. With a quick, decisive swing, she brought the wrench down on the back of his head. He crumpled silently to the ground. Jacob stared, stunned. "Lily!" "No time," she whispered urgently, grabbing his arm. "Let's go before the other one comes back." They moved quickly, hauling the unconscious man into the shadows. Jacob's mind reeled. What had he gotten his granddaughter into? But there was no time for second-guessing. The second guard was returning, his footsteps echoing in the stillness. "Hey, you find anything?" he called, stepping into the light. Jacob and Lily pressed themselves against the side of the Chevy, holding their breath. "Hey, where'd you go?" The man edged closer, squinting into the darkness. Then, without warning, he reached for his radio. "Something's not right," he muttered. "I'm calling." Jacob lunged. Grabbing the man's arm, he yanked him backward, slamming him against the side of the car. The guard let out a choked gasp, but Jacob clamped a hand over his mouth, wrestling him to the ground. There was a brief struggle, and then the guard went limp. Panting, Jacob stood up, rubbing his sore knuckles. "We need to move, now." Lily nodded, eyes wide with adrenaline. "Let's get the car out of here." Jacob fished the keys out of his pocket. He'd kept a spare set just in case. With a quick turn, the engine roared to life, the deep, throaty purr echoing through the warehouse. But the noise must have triggered something, because suddenly the overhead lights blazed on, and an alarm began to wail. "Go! Go! Go!" Lily shouted, scrambling into the passenger seat. Jacob didn't need to be told twice. He slammed the car into gear, tires squealing as they shot forward. The warehouse doors were closed, but he didn't care. A surge of determination flooded through him. "This is my car," he growled. "Nobody's taking her from me again." With a thunderous crash, the Chevy smashed through the doors, splintering wood and metal as they burst into the night. Lily whooped beside him, clutching the dashboard. "You did it, Grandpa!" Jacob grinned, exhilaration coursing through his veins. "Not yet, kid. We still have to get out of here." He gunned the engine, the Chevy tearing down the empty streets. Behind them, shouts and the roar of engines echoed. Jacob glanced in the rearview mirror. Headlights were closing in fast. "They're coming!" Lily cried. "Hold on!" Jacob shouted, wrenching the wheel. The Chevy skidded around a corner, tires screeching. They raced through the darkened streets, the pursuing cars gaining ground. Jacob's mind raced. He knew these streets like the back of his hand, but the Chevy wasn't built for high-speed chases. Then he saw it. A narrow alleyway, barely wide enough for a car. "Hang on!" he yelled. The Chevy swerved, plunging into the alley. Sparks flew as the sides scraped against the brick walls. Behind them, the pursuing cars skidded to a halt, unable to follow. Jacob let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. They were safe, for now. But as he looked at Lily, breathless and grinning beside him, he knew this was far from over. "We did it," she whispered, eyes shining. Jacob smiled grimly. "Yeah, but this is just the beginning." Somehow, he had a feeling that the real fight was still to come, and when it did, he'd be ready. The morning sun peeked over the horizon, casting a golden glow across the quiet neighborhood as Jacob's Chevy Bel Air rolled back into its rightful spot in his driveway. The vibrant red and white car gleamed proudly, a testament to resilience and determination. Jacob turned off the engine and sat for a moment, letting the silence envelop them. Lily, sitting beside him, shifted in her seat, a smile tugging at her lips. "We did it, Grandpa," she whispered softly. Jacob looked at her, his heart swelling with pride. "No, kiddo. You did it. I couldn't have done this without you." Lily beamed, and for a moment the hardships and dangers they'd faced seemed like distant memories. The stolen car, the underground crime ring, the harrowing chase through the city, all of it had led them back to this moment, sitting side by side in the car they'd fought so hard to reclaim. "Do you think they'll come after us again?" she asked quietly, glancing around. Jacob's gaze turned thoughtful as he looked out at the street, at the home he'd built, and at the car that held so much of his history. Then he shook his head slowly. "No," he murmured, "they won't, and even if they do, we'll be ready." Lily smiled, a glimmer of mischief in her eyes. "Yeah, we will." The two shared a quiet laugh, and then Lily leaned back, sighing contentedly. "You know, Grandpa, I thought this car was just a car, but it's more than that, isn't it?" Jacob nodded, his eyes misty. "It is. It's a symbol of every road I've traveled, every challenge I've overcome. And now, it's also a reminder of what we did together, of what family really means." Lily looked up at him, admiration and love shining in her eyes. "So, what happens now?" Jacob paused, considering her question. Then, with a soft smile, he turned to his granddaughter, the person who had stood by him through it all. "Now, we move forward," he said quietly. "We keep building, keep learning, maybe start a new project, something that we can work on together." Lily's eyes widened with excitement. "Like what?" Jacob shrugged, his smile broadening. "Maybe a new car, maybe a community workshop, or maybe something completely different. Whatever it is, we'll decide together." She grinned. "I like the sound of that." They sat in the quiet dawn, the hum of possibilities filling the air. For Jacob, the journey wasn't just about reclaiming a car. It was about finding purpose, about embracing change and discovering the strength of family bonds. And for Lily, it was about proving that sometimes, even the smallest spark can light up the darkest of paths. With a deep breath, Jacob pushed open the car door and stepped out, stretching in the morning light. "Come on, kiddo," he called. "We've got work to do." Lily hopped out, still smiling as they walked together toward the house. As they reached the front porch, Jacob paused and turned back to look at the Chevy one last time. The old car stood proudly, gleaming in the sunlight, a symbol of tenacity, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between a grandfather and his granddaughter. Jacob's smile softened. "Welcome home, girl," he murmured. Then, hand in hand with Lily, he turned away and stepped inside, closing the door gently behind them. The car sat quietly in the driveway, a testament to the journey they'd taken and the memories they'd created. But this wasn't just an ending. It was the beginning of something beautiful, something that neither Jacob nor Lily could have imagined. As the story of Jacob and Lily comes to a close, we're reminded that true strength doesn't come from the battles we fight alone, but from the ones we face together. It's not the destination that defines us, but the journey and the people who stand by our side through it all. So, whether it's an old car, a family legacy, or a shared dream, remember, never underestimate the power of determination, the courage to stand up for what matters, and the magic of a little help from those you love. If this story resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who could use a reminder of the strength of family, of never giving up, and of always believing in a brighter tomorrow. And if you want to see more inspiring stories like this, subscribe to our channel, leave a comment below, and hit that like button to show your support. Because at the end of the day, we all have our own journeys to take, and together we can make each one unforgettable. Until next time, keep chasing your dreams, cherish your loved ones, and never stop believing in the power of hope. See you in the next story.